Have a good day, everyone. Welcome to the learning module in Computer System Servicing for Grade 12, entitled Configuring and Installing Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, or DHCP. This is under Learning Outcome 2, entitled Configure Network Services. This module is for second quarter, week 3, day 1. Learning objectives. At the end of the learning period, the student should be able to A. Know dynamic host configuration protocol. B. Understand the use of dynamic host configuration protocol. And C. Configure and install dynamic host configuration protocol. Before we proceed to our topic, let's answer the free test. Directions. Enumerate DHCP protocol used by DHCP server to allocate the following network data to client devices. The answer is 1. IP address. 2. Subnet mask. 3. Default gateway IP address. 4. DNS server IP address. 5. Lease time. 6. Server IP address. Next question. Fill in the blanks the missing word. DHCP IP address allocation procedure. Number 7. Client sends DHCP blank to entire network. The answer is discover. Number 8. Server send DHCP blank IP settings. The answer is offer. Number 9. Client blank offered settings. The answer is request. Number 10. Server sends blank at this time. The DHCP server transfers all the network configuration data. The answer is acknowledge. Now, let us have a recap of our previous lesson relevant to our topic. Directions. Tell whether the statement belongs to dynamic IP or static IP. Write DI if the answer is dynamic and SI if static. Number 1. Provided by Internet Service Provider, ISP for external IP address. The answer is static. Number 2. The device tracking is untraceable. The answer is dynamic. Number 3. The IP address is provided by DHCP. The answer is dynamic. Number 4. No routing protocols are indulged in the process. The answer is static. Number 5. The device tracking is trackable. The answer is static. Number 6. Needs additional resources to store the information. The answer is dynamic. 7. Routing uses complex routing algorithms. The answer is dynamic. Number 8. Routes is user-defined. The answer is static. Number 9. Implemented in a large networks. The answer is dynamic. Number 10. less secure due to sending broadcast and multicast? The answer is dynamic. Let's proceed to our lesson. Understanding Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, DHCP. DHCP is a core infrastructure service on any network that provides IP addressing and DNS server information to PC clients and any other device. DHCP is used so that you do not have to statically assign IP addresses to every device on your network and manage the issues that static IP addressing can create. DHCP is a protocol used by DHCP servers in wired or wireless IP networks to dynamically allocate a variety of network configuration data, such as a user IP address, subnet mask, default gateway IP address, DNS server IP address, list time, and so on to client devices or DHCP clients. The DHCP protocol enables DHCP clients to dynamically configure such network configuration data without any manual setup process, which makes network management much easier. In IP address allocation procedure, we have what we call DORA. DORA means discover, offer, request, acknowledgement. Number 1. What is DHCP discover? When a client PC is booted, it broadcasts a DHCP discover message over the Ethernet network to locate all available DHCP servers on the same subnet network. What is DHCP offer? When a DHCP server receives the DHCP discover message from the client, it also broadcasts a DHCP offer message over the Ethernet network, informing the client that it is available. This message contains the network information such as client IP address, subnet mask, default gateway IP address, DNS IP address, and IP list time and DHCP server IP address. What is DHCP request? The client, having received the DHCP offer message, recognizes there is a DHCP server available on the same subnet. Then, it broadcasts a DHCP request message to the server over the Ethernet network, requesting network configuration data, including an IP address for itself. The DHCP acknowledge. The DHCP server, which received the DHCP request message from the client, checks if the IP address shown in the DHCP server identifier field matches its own. At this time, the DHCP server transfers all the network configuration data, including the client IP address. The same data sent along with the DHCP offer message to the client. Then, the client configures a network interface using the transferred data, finally connecting to the Internet. Steps to install Windows Server 2008 DHCP server. Number 1. Click Add Roles from the Initial Configuration Task window or from Server Manager. Go to Roles and Add Roles. Step 2. When the Add Roles wizard comes up, you can click Next on that screen. Next, select that you want to add the DHCP server role and click Next. Step 3. To configure some basic IP settings and configure the first DHCP scope, it was shown the network connection binding and asked to verify it, like what you have seen on your screen. Step 4. The wizard is asking, what interface do you want to provide DHCP services on? Took the default and click Next. Next, enter parent domain, primary DNS server, and alternate DNS server, and click Next. Step 5. Click Add to add a new scope. Name the scope or the scope name. Configure the starting and ending IP address, the subnet mask, the default gateway, and the type of subnet, and activated the scope. Step 6. Back in the Add Scope screen, click Next to add the new scope once the DHCP server is installed. Choose to disable DHCP version 6 stateless mode for this server and click Next. Then, confirm DHCP installation selection and click Install. Step 7. After only a few seconds, the DHCP server was installed and saw the window at the side. Click Close to close the installer window. Next step is how to manage new Windows Server 2008 DHCP. Step 8. In Windows Server 2008 Server Manager, under Roles, click on the new DHCP server entry. Step 9. Go to the DHCP server MMC to do this. You go to Start, go to Administrative Tools, DHCP server, like what you have seen on the screen. Step 10. When expanded out, the MMC offers a lot of features. Here is what it looks like, as what you can see on the screen. Step 11. The scope IP address range is there, and so are the DNS server and the default gateway. Step 12. Enter the scope IP address range. How to test Windows Server 2008 DHCP server. Type in the system prompt the ipconfig/release, then an ipconfig/renew, and verify that it received an IP address from the new DHCP server, as what you have seen on your screen. Also, you can go to the Windows 2008 server and verify that the new client was listed as a client on the DHCP server. This did indeed. You check out. We now go to Activities. Directions. Fill in the blanks, the missing words. This is the steps on how to install the DHCP. Adding a new role. Number 1. Click blank from the initial configuration task window or from Server Manager roles. The answer is Add roles. Number 2. Selecting the DHCP server role. When the Add Roles wizard comes up, you can click Next on that screen. Next, select that you want to add the blank and click Next. The answer is DHCP server role. Number 3. Network connection binding. Configure some basic IP settings and configure the first DHCP scope, it was shown on the network connection binding and asked to verify blank. The answer is network connection. Next is, this is the question for number 4 to 6, entering domain and DNS information. The wizard is asking, what interface do you want to provide DHCP service on? Took the default and click next. Next, entered blank, blank, and blank, and click next. The answer is parent domain, primary DNS, and alternate DNS. This is a question for 7 to 9, adding a new DHCP scope. Click Add to add a new scope, name, scope or scope name, configure the blank and blank IP address, and blank default gateway, type of subnet, wired, and activated the scope. Choose to disable blank stateless mode for this server and click next. Then, confirm DHCP installation selections on the screen and click install. The answer is starting, ending, subnet, and DHCP v6. To summarize the lesson, let's proceed to wrap up. DHCP core services. Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol is a core infrastructure service on any network that provides IP addressing and DNS server information to PC clients, any other device. DHCP is used so that you do not have to statically assign IP addresses to every device on your network and manage the issues that static IP addressing can create. Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol is an invaluable service when you have a network larger than a handful of compute. It's also a standard component of enterprise networks and sub-networks. In valuing, you integrate the values you have learned by answering the question. The question is, it is a good idea to prepare and have all the necessary information before you configure your DHCP server. Briefly discussed below. You may answer this on your digitized worksheet. To make sure how far have you gone through in our lesson, please answer the following pause test. Directions. Read each statement below carefully. Write T if the statement is correct and F if wrong. Number 1. DHCP is used so that you do not have to statically assign IP addresses to every device on your network and manage the issues that static IP addressing can create. The answer is true. Number 2. When a client PC is booted, it broadcasts a DHCP discover message over the Ethernet network to locate all available DHCP servers on the different subnet network. The answer is false. Number 3. When a DHCP server receives the DHCP discover message from the client, it also broadcasts a DHCP offer message over the Ethernet network. The answer is true. Number 4. DHCP offer network data such as client IP address, subnet mask, default gateway IP address, DNS IP address, IP list time, and DHCP server IP address. The answer is true. Number 5. IP address allocation procedure is request, discover, acknowledge, discover respectively. The answer is false. That is the end of our lesson. Thank you and see you again on the next lesson. Bye.